Welcome back to This is Thailand, the channel where we sit down with the men who went looking for a new life out here and tell you what they actually found. No filters, no sales pitch, just the truth, the way they lived it. Today's story belongs to a man named Rainer. He's 65 years old, German, from a little town outside Kassel, and for 30 years he was a master plumber. The kind of man who ran his own workshop, who could look at a leaking pipe and tell you exactly what was wrong and exactly how to fix it. A practical man, a man who trusted his hands. But there are some things you can't fix with your hands. And when life handed Rainer a problem no wrench could solve, he did what a lot of men do. He got on a plane. He came here. Now, I want to be straight with you before we start. This isn't one of those stories about a bar girl and a stolen bank account. There's no villain in this one. And in a strange way, that makes it harder to hear. Because what Rainer walked into wasn't a scam. It was something real. Something a lot of good men get wrong out here, for the best reasons in the world. He had no idea when he booked that first plane ticket what it would cost him, not in the way he expected. This one's going to stay with you, I promise you that. Here's his story in his own words. My name is Rainer. I was a plumber. Installateur, we say in German. A proper one, with the master certificate, the Meisterbrief, the whole thing. 30 years I ran my own workshop just outside Kassel. Two men, me and whichever apprentice I hadn't scared off yet. I'm telling you this first because I want you to understand what kind of man I am, or was, I don't know anymore. A pipe leaks or it doesn't. You put your hand on the joint, you feel the damp, you know. A fitting is tight or it isn't. There's no argument with a pipe. It doesn't lie to you. It doesn't change its mind. That was my whole life, understand? Things you can touch, things you can test. I had no patience for anything else. My wife used to say I'd trust a torque wrench before I'd trust my own mother, and, well, she wasn't wrong. My wife, Ingrid. I should talk about Ingrid. She ran everything I couldn't, and that was more than I ever admitted while she was alive. The birthdays, the Christmas cards, ringing our son to remember his. I don't even know what she remembered. That's the point. I never had to. She kept the calendar in her head. She kept the whole soft part of a life in her head, the part that isn't pipes and invoices, and I just turned up. I did the work. She did the living. 41 years, that was the arrangement, and I thought it was a good one. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesday was nothing, just an ordinary morning. She was making the coffee. I could hear the machine going in the kitchen, that gurgle it does at the end. And then I heard her sit down. Just sit down on the floor, sort of soft. Not a scream, nothing dramatic, just down. Heart attack. They told me later it was fast, like that was a comfort. By the afternoon, she was gone. You want to know the truth? I keep waiting to feel it properly, and it never comes all at once. That's the thing nobody tells you. When someone's sick a long time, you get to say goodbye in pieces. You get to practice. I got none of that. 1 minute there's coffee gurgling, and the next there's a silence in the house that, I'm sorry, give me a second. The silence. That's the part. One could fix anything in that house. The boiler, the taps, the radiator that always knocked in winter. 30 years of tools in the cellar, and not one of them was any good for a silence. You can't tighten it. You can't bleed it out like air in a line. It just sits there in every room, and it doesn't leak away. So I did what I know how to do. I kept busy. I kept the workshop going for a while. Kept it tidy mostly. Swept the floor that didn't need sweeping. Lined up the tools that were already lined up. Answered the phone when someone's toilet was blocked, and pretended I still cared about a stranger's blocked toilet. 8 months of that, going through the motions of a life that didn't have Ingrid in it, telling myself I was fine, telling myself the workshop was the point. Then one morning I stood in the middle of it and I thought, Quatsch. This is Quatsch. A workshop is just a workshop. A house with no one in it is just plumbing. Walls and pipes and nobody. I sold the business by the end of that month. Didn't even haggle. First reasonable offer done. And then I had nothing to keep me busy, and that was worse. My son came around a lot in those months. Good boy, grown man now, wife of his own, but you know what I mean? And he'd sit across from me at the kitchen table, Ingrid's table. And he'd have this look on his face, this careful look, like I was something that might break if he spoke too loud. I couldn't stand it, that look. My own son treating me like porcelain. One evening he just said it. Papa, go somewhere, anywhere, please, just get out of this house. And I wanted to tell him to mind his own business. That's my instinct. Stubborn old man, I know. But he was right, and some part of me knew he was right, because I couldn't sit in that kitchen one more evening, listening to the clock and the nothing. So I got the laptop out. Ingrid always did the holidays. I'd never booked one in my life, if you can believe that. 41 years, and she planned every trip. I didn't even know where to look. I typed in warm. That's all I had. Warm and far, and somewhere nobody knew me, and nobody would give me that look. An old apprentice of mine had gone to a place called Hua Hin the year before. Showed me photos once. Beach, blue water, cheap. I found it on the map. Thailand, 3 weeks. I booked 3 weeks. And I want to be clear about something because I know how these stories go, and I know what you're thinking. It wasn't about women. I swear to you it wasn't. I was 63 years old with a dead wife and a house full of silence. I wasn't looking for romance. I wasn't looking for anything, really. I just wanted to go somewhere warm and stop being looked at. That's all it was in the beginning. I flew into Bangkok first, then down to Hua Hin, and I'll be honest with you, the first 2 days I hated it. The heat hits you like opening an oven. You step off the plane, and the air just sits on you. Wet, heavy. My shirt was through by the time I found a taxi. And the noise, mein Gott, the noise. Motorbikes everywhere, hundreds of them, coming from every direction at once. No order to any of it. A German sees traffic like that and something in his brain starts screaming. Where are the lines? Where are the rules? Who is in charge here? Nobody. Nobody's in charge. And somehow it all just flows. The coffee was the worst part, though. First morning, I asked for a coffee at the hotel, and they brought me this brown water. Katzenwasser. Cat water, we say. Weak and sweet and terrible. I nearly went home over the coffee. I'm not joking. 63 years old, standing in a hotel lobby in Hua Hin, genuinely considering flying back to Germany because the coffee was rubbish. That's the kind of man I was. Rigid. Everything had to be a certain way, or I couldn't stand it. But then something happened, and it happened slowly, over about a week. So I didn't really notice it while it was happening. People smiled at me, not selling me anything, not wanting anything. The woman who cleaned the room, she'd wait, the little bow with the hands together, and smile, and it wasn't for a tip. She did it before I ever gave her anything. The old man frying pork skewers on the corner, mooping they call it, he'd nod and grin every morning like we were old friends. Kids would say hello and run off laughing. And I realized, standing on the beach road one evening with the sun going down all orange over the water and the temple bells going somewhere behind me, I realized nobody here was looking at me like I might break. You have to understand what that meant. For 8 months in Castle, every single person who looked at me saw a widower. Poor Rainer. Poor man, lost his wife. That face. My son's face. The neighbors' faces. I couldn't buy a loaf of bread without someone doing the sad head tilt at me. Here, nobody knew. Here I was, just another Farang, another old German with red arms and bad sandals. And honestly, it was the best I'd felt in a year. To be nobody, to be nothing. Just a sweaty old man eating mooping on a plastic stool. My chest, I don't know how to say it. For 8 months it had felt like a pipe with the valve shut, clamped. And out there it started to, I don't know, open a little. I settled into a routine, because I always need a routine. Walk in the morning before the heat got stupid, market, sleep in the afternoon like the whole country does. And I found my coffee. This little place off the main road, not on the beach, a proper cafe with a real machine. And the girl who ran it actually knew how to use it. Strong, bitter, real cafe. After the cat water, I could have wept. So I went back every day. Same time, more or less. Same table. That's a German for you. Find one good thing and grip it like a dog with a bone. And that's where I met Noi. She worked the till. 41, though I didn't know that then. Small like they all are. hair tied back, glasses she'd push up her nose when she was doing the accounts. Not, how do I put this? She wasn't one of these girls dressed up for the tourists. No short skirt, no fluttering the eyelashes. She wore an apron. She had a pen behind her ear. She looked like someone who worked for a living because she did. The first thing she ever said to me that wasn't about coffee, I was buying some fruit from a cart outside, mango, and the man was giving me my change, and Noi leaned out the door of the cafe and said something sharp to him in Thai. Fast. And the man laughed, embarrassed, and gave me another 20 baht. I looked at her. She shrugged. He give you farang price, she said. Short you 20 baht. Not okay. 20 baht. That's 50 cents maybe. Nothing. She didn't have to say a word. It wasn't her business, wasn't her money. But she did it anyway because it wasn't right, and after 30 years of a job where either the numbers are correct or they're not, either the joint holds or it leaks, meeting someone who got annoyed on my behalf over 20 baht because it simply wasn't correct, something in me sat up and paid attention. I told her, in my blunt way, I don't do small talk, never have. I told her the coffee at my hotel tasted like something you'd flush out of a radiator. In German, a bit rougher than that. And instead of getting offended, she laughed, really laughed, put her hand over her mouth the way they do. She looked for the word. You say everything, huh? No soft. I'm German, I said. We don't do soft. And she laughed again and went back to her accounts and pushed her glasses up her nose. That was it. That was the whole thing. No fireworks, no romance, nothing like what you're probably imagining. Just an old plumber and a woman with a pen behind her ear and a cup of coffee that finally tasted right. I started staying longer at the cafe. An hour? 2. I'd read or pretend to read, and we'd talk a bit when she wasn't busy. She asked me once why I came to Thailand alone. Most men my age, she said, they come with, she made a gesture, and I understood. The bars, the younger women. She'd seen 1,000 of them. I don't know why I told her the truth. I hadn't told anyone the truth, not properly. But I said, my wife died last year. I came here to get away from people feeling sorry for me. And she didn't do the head tilt. She didn't say sorry, sorry the way everyone did. She just went quiet for a second and nodded and said, coffee on me today. And that was all. That was the thing that got me, if I'm honest. Not a smile, not a figure. That she heard about Ingrid and didn't make it a performance. She just gave me a free coffee and let me sit with it. My 3 weeks went fast after that. Too fast. And on the last day, standing in the airport at Bangkok with my bag, waiting to go back to that silent house and castle, I didn't want to get on the plane. That's the truth of it. I stood there thinking about the coffee and the pork skewers and the woman with the pen behind her ear who got angry about 20 baht. And I thought, I could come back. Nothing's stopping me. Nobody's waiting at home. I should have thought harder about that last part. Nobody's waiting at home. That's exactly the kind of man this place is dangerous for. But I didn't think harder. I booked another flight before I'd even landed in Frankfurt. I went back to Kassel for about 6 weeks, and those 6 weeks decided everything. I couldn't settle. The house was worse than before. Now I had something to compare the silence to. I'd sit at Ingrid's table with my proper German coffee, the good stuff, the coffee I'd nearly flown home over, and it didn't taste of anything anymore. I kept thinking about that little cafe, the pen behind her ear, 20 baht. We'd started messaging, Noi and me. Online, that's the app everyone uses out there, not WhatsApp, Line, with the little cartoon bears. She'd send me a photo of the cafe in the morning. I'd send her, I don't know, the gray sky over Kassel. She'd write back, so cold. You come back to warm, huh? With the little bear covering its eyes. It wasn't romantic exactly. Or I told myself it wasn't. 2 people talking. That's all. But I'd check my phone the second I woke up, and a man who checks his phone like that is telling himself a story. So I booked a longer trip, 2 months this time. And before I even landed, I'd half decided if it went well, I'd look into staying properly, the retirement visa. I'd read about it on the forums. You have to be over 50, which, no problem there. And you need 800,000 baht sitting in a Thai bank. That's about 22,000 euro. I had it. That was never going to be the issue for me. Money was the one thing I did have. And that, if you want the honest truth, is the whole problem with a man like me. I had the savings, 90-odd thousand euro from a lifetime of careful work, plus a decent German pension coming in every month, around 1,600 euro. I was comfortable and alone in 63. You put those things together, and you've built the perfect fool. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The 2 months were good. They were really good, and I won't pretend otherwise because if I only tell you the bad parts, you won't understand why I stayed. Noi and I became a thing, slowly. She'd finish at the cafe and we'd go and eat somewhere. Proper Thai food, some tam that took the roof off my mouth, grilled chicken, sticky rice you roll in your fingers. She taught me to eat the som tam even though it made a German man's eyes water. She laughed at me, sweating. I like being laughed at by her. That's a strange thing to say, but there it is. And here's the part that mattered to me. The part one kept turning over. She wouldn't take my money. I don't mean once. I mean I tried, more than once the way you do, offering to pay for this or that, slipping her something, and she got, not angry, but firm. Pushed my hand back. One time I left 1,000 baht on the cafe counter, just to help, because the place was quiet, and I could see business was slow, and she followed me down the street to give it back. Actually followed me, pressed it into my hand and said, I not want you think I am like that. Like the girls in the bar, I have job, I am okay. Like that, like the girls in the bar. Now a smarter man, a less lonely man, might have heard that and thought, hang on, why is she telling me what she's not? Why is that even in her head? Nobody insists they're honest unless the question's already in the room somewhere. But I didn't think that. God help me, I thought the opposite. I thought, finally, a real one. Not like the horror stories the other Farangs told over their Leo towers, all of them bitter, all of them burned. Not like that. This woman chased me down the street to give money back. What more proof does a man need? That was the hook, not a lie she told me. A thing she refused. She refused my money, and in refusing it, she got past every defense I had, because a plumber trusts what he can test, and I thought I'd tested her. I thought the 20 baht and the 1,000 baht were the test, and she'd passed. I never considered there might be a bigger question I hadn't thought to ask. So I met her people a little at a time. Her daughter first, 9 years old, shy, hid behind her mother's leg, called me nothing at all for the first month, and then one day called me by my name. Rainu, couldn't get the ending, and I'll tell you, something went in my chest when she did that. I didn't have grandchildren. Ingrid and I, our son, never. Anyway, no grandchildren. And this little girl looking up at me saying, Rainu, you don't put a price on that. That's the trouble. You don't put a price on it, so you don't notice when the price starts getting put on other things. Then, near the end of the 2 months, Noi's mother got sick. Not dramatically, nothing that felt like a con. She had the diabetes, the sugar they call it, and she needed the proper medication and the checks, and out in the village where the family was, up in Isan, they'd been rationing it, skipping doses because it cost money they didn't have. When Noi told me this, she wasn't asking for anything. That's important. She was just quiet one evening, worried, and I asked what was wrong, and she told me, and then she changed the subject. And I sat there and I thought about my Ingrid and the coffee and how fast a heart can just stop. And I thought, this woman's mother is rationing medicine over what? A few thousand baht a month? So I offered. I brought it up again. I said, let me take care of the medication. It's nothing to me. And it was true. It was 8,000 baht a month, about 210 euro, which to a man with my savings is genuinely nothing. She said no at first. Of course she did. She always said no first. And I pushed because I wanted to, because for the first time since that Tuesday in Castle, I had something to fix, something real, a problem with a clear solution and a price tag I could actually pay. She cried a little when she finally said yes, held my hand with both of hers. And I felt like a man again. That's the thing nobody warns you about. It didn't feel like being taken. It felt like being needed. After a year of being useless in an empty house, it felt like the best thing I'd done in longer than I could remember. I set up the transfer before I flew home. 8,000 baht a month, standing order, for a woman's mother I'd met twice. Didn't think twice about it. Why would I? It was nothing. That's how it always starts. Not with the big number, with the small one you don't even feel. By the end of that year, I'd moved out properly. Sold up in Castle, the house, most of the furniture. My son helped me clear it, and I won't forget the day we carried Ingrid's chair out to the van. He didn't say much. He's like me that way. But he stood in the empty living room afterward and asked me straight, "Papa, this woman, you're sure?" And I said yes. Of course I said yes. What else does a stubborn old man say? I got the retirement visa sorted. The non-O, you put your 800,000 baht in a Thai bank and you leave it there, and every year you do the dance with immigration at the Jamtian office. The queue, the photocopies, the little stamps. Rented a place in Hua Hin. Nothing fancy. And I settled into something that, for about a year, honestly felt like a life again. The temple bells in the morning. Coffee at Noise Cafe. The little girl running to the door when she saw me. "Raina, Raina." I'd bring her these coconut sweets from the market and she'd squeal like I'd brought her gold. I was happy. I want that on the record, because of everything that came after. I was happy, and it was real, and I don't take it back. Then a few months in, we went up to Izon, to the village, to meet the family properly. Now I'd sent the medication money faithfully. 8,000 baht a month, never missed. But I'd never seen where it went. And I could tell she was nervous the whole bus ride up. This long, hot bus through Korat and beyond. Hours of it, flat brown land and water buffalo, and those little wooden houses up on stilts. She kept smoothing her skirt, kept telling me the house was not so good, not like Farang house. You don't be shocked, okay? And I wasn't shocked, exactly. But it hit me harder than I expected. Real poverty, not the postcard kind. A wooden house on stilts, tin roof, a few chickens under it, a squat toilet out the back, and water from a big clay jar. Noi's mother, tiny, brown, folded up small, taking my hand and pressing it to her forehead and saying thank you in Thai. Over and over, kop kun, for the medicine, for keeping her alive. That's not nothing, a woman telling you kept her alive. And the bathroom, I'm a plumber. 30 years. First thing I clock in any house anywhere on earth is the plumbing. And there wasn't any, not really. The roof leaked in 3 places. You could see the water stains, the black mold. When it rained, the old woman's room got wet. A diabetic old woman sleeping in a damp room. I couldn't not see it. You understand? A man spends his life fixing exactly this and then stands in front of it and is supposed to what? Drink his water and look away? So I said I'd do it. Fix the roof. Put in a proper bathroom. A real one. With a septic tank done right. Running water. The lot. Nobody asked me. I want to be clear about that because it matters to how I feel about all of it even now. Nobody in that family asked me for a single baht. I offered. I insisted. Noi actually argued with me about it, said it was too much, said I already did enough with the medicine. And me, being the stubborn klotz that I am, I took her saying no as one more reason to do it. The materials, the local lads to help with the concrete, the tank, the pipes, the new roof. It came to about 280,000 baht all in. That's around 7,300 euro. And I did most of the skilled work myself, sweating through my shirt in that heat. An old German plumber up a ladder in Izon, with the whole village watching like I was the television. The kids brought me water. The men brought me Leo in the evening, warm, and we couldn't understand a word of each other, but we drank and laughed anyway. Best few weeks I'd had in years. And I thought, I'm not joking. I had a purpose. I had a family around a table eating samtam and sticky rice, the mother getting better, the little girl. Noi laughing. After a year of an empty house in Castle, I was needed. I was useful. And here's the thing I've had a long time to think about since. I couldn't tell the difference. Being needed and being loved. To me, they'd gone and become the same thing. And once that happens to a man, once he can't tell those two apart, well, he'll pay any price for either because he thinks he's buying the other. While I was up there, of course, I met everyone, the whole web of them. This is where I started to understand something about how it works out here, though I didn't have the words for it then. Noi was the eldest daughter, and out there, the eldest daughter carries the family. That's not a scam. That's the deal. That's how it's always been. And now she'd brought home a farang, and a farang means the family status goes up in the whole village. You understand, it's face, it's standing. Suddenly, Noi's family were the ones with the German, the ones with the new roof. People came to look at the bathroom. I could feel it, the expectations settling on me, soft as the heat. Never spoken, never a demand. Just there. In the way the mother held my hand, in the way the neighbors smiled, and the requests when they came, and they came, never came from Noi. That's the part that kept me blind for so long. It was always the situation. The brother's motorbike broke, and he couldn't get to work. The niece needed the school fees, or she'd have to drop out. Never Noi asking. Just problems appearing that I happened to be standing near, with money in my pocket and a need to be the man who fixes things. So I started sending more, a regular amount on top of the medicine. 25,000 baht a month, about €650, for the family. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was because I wanted to, which was even true. My son rang me around then, video call. I was so pleased with myself, I showed him the bathroom, turned the phone around, look what I built. And he went quiet. That particular quiet I knew from his mother. And he just said, "It looks good, Papa," in a voice that meant something else entirely. I changed the subject. I'd stopped counting by then. That's the honest measure of it. I still wrote every transfer in my little notebook. Force of habit, 30 years of invoices. You don't stop. But I never added it up, because adding it up would have felt like not trusting her, and I trusted her. God help me, I trusted her completely. The second year is when it stopped being a thing I did and started being a thing I was. Let me explain what I mean. The first year, sending money felt like a series of choices. This month, this need, this decision. By the second year, it wasn't choices anymore. It was just the weather. It was just how the world was now. Money left me and went to Sion the way rain falls, without anybody deciding it, and the needs never stopped. That's the thing I want you to hear, because at the time I couldn't. They never once stopped, and they never once got smaller. First it was the brother. Noi's younger brother, nice enough lad, always smiling, never had a job that lasted more than a few months. He had debts, some motorbike loan, some other thing I never fully understood, and I think it was around 60,000 baht, about €1,500, to clear it and stop some man coming round the house. Family shame, you understand. Face. If the debt collector comes to the village, everybody sees, and the whole family loses face. And I couldn't have that landing on Noi's mother, so I paid it. Then the niece, bright girl, top of her class, and she'd have to leave school if the fees weren't found. Private school because the government one was rubbish, and it was 40,000 baht a year, about €1,000. And what do you say to that? No, let the clever child pull herself out of school? Over €1,000 to me, who had 90-odd thousand sitting in the bank. What kind of a man says no to that? Me. The answer should sometimes have been me. But it never was. And running underneath all of it, the 25,000 a month for the family, plus the 8,000 for the medicine, month after month after month, standing orders, quiet, automatic. About 33,000 baht a month going north before I'd even had my morning coffee. Call it €860 every month on top of every emergency that came in between. I kept writing it in the notebook. I told you about the notebook. Little black thing, the same kind I'd used for job invoices for 30 years, and I wrote every transfer in it out of pure habit. The date, the amount, what it was for. Brother debt, school, mama medicine. Roof part 2, because of course the roof needed a second go. but I never added up the columns. Not once. I'd get to the bottom of a page and turn to a fresh one and never look back. Because, and I've thought about this a great deal, because to add it up would have been to ask a question. And I did not want to know the answer to that question. I wanted to keep not knowing. There's a kind of man who'd rather bleed slowly in the dark than switch the light on and see the wound. I told myself all the usual things. It's temporary. Once the brother's sorted, once the niece finishes school, it'll ease off. It's cultural. This is just how it works here. And who am I, a Farang, to say a whole country's got it wrong? That last one, that was the clever trap, because it was partly true. It is how it works. Supporting your parents, your family. Out here, that's not weakness or being soft. That's the deepest thing there is. I wasn't wrong that it was cultural. I was wrong that being cultural made it bottomless in a way I could survive. There was one evening I think about. We were down in Hua Hin at a little place by the night market, eating and drinking, and I noticed the medicine money. I'd seen the mother the month before, and she seemed to have far more pills and things than 8,000 baht buys. And I asked Noi just lightly where the medicine money went exactly. She went a bit still and said, "For Mama, all for Mama," and changed the subject to the food. She changed the subject, and I let her. I let her because I didn't want the evening spoiled and because asking felt like an accusation, and accusing Noi felt impossible, felt like a betrayal of the one good thing I had. So I picked up my Leo and I let it go. Should have asked more. Didn't. That's the whole story of those 2 years in 3 words. Should have asked more. The one-time reality tried to grab me by the collar. I fought it off. There was this Englishman, Dave, drank at a bar off Soy Bintabat, one of these bitter old expats. Been out here 20 years, seen it all, hated all of it, and couldn't leave. And he'd watch me a while, and one night he leaned over his Chang and said, "You know what you are to that family, mate? You're an ATM with a visa, that's all. The day the money stops, you'll find out real quick what you are to them." And God, I was angry, properly angry. I told him he didn't know Noi, didn't know her family, that he'd been poisoned by his own bad luck, and now he wanted everyone as miserable as him. I stood up and left half a beer on the table, which for a German is basically a declaration of war. But here's the thing I've never told anyone. I was angry because for about half a second, before I got angry, some cold, sober part of me thought, what if he's right? And I couldn't have that, so I turned it into anger at Dave instead, because anger at Dave was bearable, and the other thing wasn't. That's how a smart man stays stupid, you know. Not because he can't see, because seeing costs too much and he can't afford the price just yet. Around then, it was coming up to Songkran, the water festival, Thai New Year, middle of April, when the whole country goes home to the village and throws water over each other in the street, and it's genuinely one of the loveliest things I've ever seen. Everyone's soaked, laughing, the old people getting water poured gently over their hands for blessing, the young ones just going to war with buckets and hoses. We went up to Ison for it, the whole family together, the new bathroom I'd built getting proper use, the mother stronger than I'd ever seen her, the little girl shrieking with a water gun, and me sat there dripping wet and sunburned and honestly, happy as I'd been since Ingrid. Noi's sister was there. The older one from Bangkok, sharp, worked in an office, spoke better English than the rest. She'd had a few, the Hong Thong whiskey going round, and she was in a good mood, warm towards me, grateful, I think. And she leaned in, meaning it kindly, meaning it as a nice thing, and she said something she thought I already knew. That's how it happened. Not a caught phone, not a private detective. Just a kind, tipsy woman at Songkran saying a true thing over the sound of everybody laughing. What the sister said, she said in a mix of Thai and English, laughing, waving her cup, thinking it was old news between family. She said something like, "You so good to us, Rainer, you know, since you pay off Mama's old loan. Everything much better now. The man from Udon, he don't come no more." The old loan. I sat there dripping, a water gun somewhere going off, a child screaming happy, and I said, "What loan?" And she laughed and said the loan, the big one from before, And then she saw my face and something in her caught, and she got up quick to help with the food. I didn't make a scene. That's not me. I'm not a man who makes a scene. One sat there and drank my warm hong thong and smiled at the little girl and helped pour water over the grandmother's hands for the blessing. And inside I'd gone very quiet and very cold. The way you go when you've cut yourself badly and it hasn't started hurting yet. Because I understood in that moment that the medicine money, the $8,000 a month, the very first thing, the thing that started all of it, the pure, clean thing I'd insisted on, that I was proud of, had never been only medicine. Part of it, for a long time, had gone to clearing a family debt I'd never been told about. An old debt. From before me. We went back down to Hua Hin 2 days later. I was quiet on the bus. Noi asked me 3 times what was wrong, and I said nothing. Tired, the heat. Kringjai, they call it. This thing where you don't say the hard thing to someone's face, you avoid the sharp edge, and God help me after 2 years I'd caught it off them. I couldn't even say the thing out loud. But when we got home, I got out the notebook, and I did the thing I had not done in 2 years. I sat at the little kitchen table with the fan going and the geckos on the wall, and I added it up. Every page, every line, the medicine, the family money, the brother's debt, the niece's school, the roof twice, a dozen little emergencies I'd half forgotten. 2 years of it. Round about 38,000 euro. I sat and looked at that number for a long time. 38,000. About 1.5 million baht. Not the roof over my head. I still had the 800,000 in the bank for the visa. I wasn't destitute. I want to be clear. This isn't the story of a man who lost everything, but 38,000 euro of the careful money, the invoice by invoice money. The money Ingrid and I never spent on ourselves because you save it. You don't waste it. That's how we were raised. Gone north. In 2 years. And the coldest part wasn't the number. I'm a plumber. Numbers I can handle. The coldest part was that when I read that column, I understood there was no bottom to it. Not because anyone was wicked. Because that's how it is. The brother would always have a new debt. The niece would finish school, and there'd be a cousin behind her. The mother, God bless her, would need medicine till the day she died, and I hoped that was a long way off. It was a well with no bottom, and I'd been pouring myself into it for 2 years thinking I was nearly done filling it. I asked Noi about the loan that night. Quietly, I said, the medicine money, some of it went to pay an old loan, yes? For the family? And here's the thing, she didn't lie. She didn't cry, she didn't beg, she didn't get angry. She just looked at me, a bit confused that I was even upset, and said yes. Of course. The family had the loan, it was shameful. The man came to the house and my money had helped make it go away. And she genuinely did not understand why this was a betrayal to me. Because to her it wasn't one, it was family. It was what the money was for. Mama's health, the family's debt, the family's face. To Noi these were all the same thing, all one word, and I'd carved them up into separate accounts in my German head, and she'd never once thought to. You angry? She said, and she was baffled. It helped Mama. It helped everybody. Why you angry? And I couldn't answer her, because she wasn't lying, and she wasn't sorry, and she wasn't wrong, not by where she stood. She'd never told me about the loan because it never occurred to her that it was mine to be told about. The money was the family's the moment it arrived. That's not theft. I've thought about this every day since, and I still won't call it theft. It's a different idea of what money even is. She loved me. I believe that still. I've turned it over 10,000 times, and I still believe she loved me. And she also took the medicine money and quietly paid the family's debt with it, and never thought I needed to know. And both of those are true at once. And if you can't hold both at once, then you'll never understand what happened to me out here. That Englishman Dave, off Soy Bintabat, he'd have said told you ATM with a visa. But he was wrong too. He was as wrong as I'd been, just from the other side. It wasn't as cold as him, but it wasn't as warm as me. It was something in the middle that neither of us had a word for. I sat up that night after she'd gone to sleep, out on the little balcony, the motorbike still going somewhere below, the smell of somebody's late-night mooping drifting up, a dog barking, a temple somewhere very faint. And I understood the relationship couldn't be what I needed it to be. Not because she'd wronged me, because I'd built the whole thing on being the man who fixes the leak. And there was no fixing this, because it wasn't a leak. It was the tide. You can't plumb the tide. No fitting holds it back. It just comes in, and comes in, and comes in. And I finally understood what I'd actually done. A lonely man who couldn't tell being needed from being loved had found a family who would need him, sincerely and endlessly and without malice, for exactly as long as he could pay, and had called it a rescue. So where does a man go from there? That's the question, isn't it? I didn't leave in a rage. There was no big scene, no throwing of things, no last terrible argument. That's not how it went, and honestly, that's not how these things usually go when there's no villain to shout at. You can't slam the door on someone who hasn't done anything wrong by their own lights. What I did was slow down. Over a few weeks, I stopped the standing orders. Not all at once. I'm not a cruel man. And the mother still needed her medicine. And I wasn't going to let an old woman go without her insulin to make a point about my feelings. But the family money, the $25,000 a month, I brought it down, and then I brought it down again. And I told Noy straight, in my blunt German way, that I couldn't be the whole family's bank anymore. That I was one man, not a company. That the well was running me dry. And you know what happened? Nothing dramatic. She understood in her way, or she understood that the money was changing, which to her was the same thing. Things got quieter between us, cooler. Not cruel, just cooler. And I understood, watching it cool, that a good part of what had bound us was the flow of it, the giving and the needing, and once that changed, we were two people who'd built a bridge out of something that was now gone, standing on opposite banks, waving politely. I moved out of the place we shared, got my own little studio, other end of Hua Hin, near the fishing pier, where the boats come in at dawn, and the whole street smells of the sea and diesel and drying squid. And I sat in it, 65 years old, on my own again, and I'll tell you the truth. For the first few weeks, the silence was back. The same silence from Castle. Followed me all the way around the world, that silence. Sat down next to me in Thailand, like it had bought its own ticket. But it was different this time. Because in Castle, the silence was just grief. Here it had some understanding in it. And that's not nothing. Let me tell you what I actually lost, since that's what you came to hear. About 38,000 euro. Gone, and I won't ever get it back, and I've made my peace with that. 2 years. My pride, a fair bit of it, because a man who prides himself on being practical does not enjoy discovering he was the softest touch in the whole of Hua Hin. And my son, that cost me too. When I finally told him the whole of it on the phone, he didn't say I told you so. He's a better man than me, my son. He just went quiet, that Ingrid quiet, and said, "Come home for Christmas at least, Papa." And I could hear in his voice all the months he'd spent worrying about the stubborn old fool of a father who wouldn't listen. That's a thing you can't buy back at any price. The worry you put on the people who actually love you. Here's the part that surprises people. I stayed. I'm still here. I didn't run home to Germany with my tail between my legs, because Germany is a silent house and a grave I visit. And this is warm, and I'm too old now to start over a third time. And here's the part that surprises people even more. I still pay for the mother's medicine, the 8,000 a month. Every month still, to this day. Why? Because that part was real. One meant it when I started it, and the woman is still alive and still sick, and I'm not going to let her die to prove I learned my lesson. I decided what I owe, you understand? That's the whole difference. Before they decided, or the situation decided, or my own loneliness decided. Now I decide. A plumber pays the bill he's agreed to pay, not a baht more, and that one I've agreed to. That one's mine. Noy and I still speak. It's not bitter. She's not a bad woman. I want to say that as plainly as I can, because I know what channel this is, and I know what you're expecting me to say about her. She's not a bad woman. She loved me as much as her life let her, and her life came with a whole village attached, and I couldn't carry a village. That's not her crime. That's just arithmetic. Two things I couldn't make add up. So, what do I tell you? What's the lesson, if there is one? It's this. When Ingrid died, I didn't just lose my wife. I lost the thing that made me useful. And a useless man will pay anything, do anything, believe anything to feel needed again. That's the real danger out here. It's not the women. It's not the bar girls. It's not even the money. It's that you arrive already broken, with a hole in you, and this place is very, very good at filling holes. For a while, for a price. I mistook being needed for being loved. I want you to write that down if you're my age, and you've buried someone, and you're sitting there thinking about a plane ticket. Being needed and being loved are not the same account. A man who can't tell them apart will empty himself into the first person who needs him and call it romance. And family out here, family isn't a leak you seal and walk away from. It's the tide. It comes in, and it does not stop. And there's no shame in that. It's their whole beautiful world. But you cannot plumb the tide. No fitting maid will hold it. If you go with your eyes open. Decide what you owe before you love someone, not after. Keep your own account. And for God's sake, grieve your dead properly before you go looking to be somebody's rescue. That's it. That's all I've got. I'm all right, in case you're wondering. I have my coffee. Proper coffee now. I found a machine. And the boats in the morning, and my son on the phone, and a warm country, and a bill I chose to pay. That's a life. It's not the one I planned. But nobody gets that one anyway. And that's where we'll leave Rainer, in his little studio by the pier in Hua Hin, paying a bill he decided was his to pay. I told you at the start there was no villain in this one, and now you see why. Nobody stole from Rainer. No one ran a con. What happened to him is quieter than that, and in a way it's more common, and it catches good men more often than any bar girl scheme ever has. He arrived grieving, wealthy, and desperate to be useful again. And he walked into a culture where supporting family isn't manipulation. It's love. It's duty. It's the deepest thing there is. Both sides were sincere. And sincerity, it turns out, can cost you just as much as a lie. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself, the empty house, the full bank account, the plane ticket you keep almost booking, hear the man. Grieve first. Know the difference between being needed and being loved. And whatever you give, give because you chose it. With your eyes open and your own account kept separate. Family obligation in Thailand is real, and it is beautiful, and it will not bend to fit a Western budget or a Western idea of where one person ends and another begins. That's not a warning against Thai people. It's a warning to understand what you're walking into before you're 2 years and 38,000 deep. Thanks for sitting with us. If Rainer's story meant something to you, leave a comment. The fellas out here read them, and sometimes hearing from you is what keeps a man from making the mistake in the first place. Look after yourselves and each other. This is Thailand.